let's talk about the wedding cake. Yes, this will be a fun section to talk about because you always kind of think about, oh, what would my wedding cake look like? Or you look at wedding photos and you love the photos of the bride and groom cutting their cake. It's fun, it's iconic, it's classic. That's why this section will be so fun. So one thing that I want you to do though is take into consideration that you can save money in this area of your wedding by going a more budget-friendly route. What do I mean? So this was a tip that I learned when I was planning my wedding. You can get a small wedding cake, so like a small 2-tiered wedding cake, and then just buy extra sheet cakes to make it easier for serving also, because wedding cakes can be somewhat complicated to cut because you have to take all the tiers off and then you're cutting them. If you just buy a small wedding cake so you get that beautiful photo of you and your groom cutting the cake, but then you have all these backup sheet cakes to bring in, it's so easy to slice those cakes up and serve them. A lot easier, and it's a lot cheaper, let me tell you that. So absolutely, you can ask the baker for sure if they offer cake tastings, because if you're a big cake connoisseur and this is a big thing for you, then you'll want to make sure that you approve of how the cake tastes before the wedding. For me, I'm not like a huge cake person. I like it, but I don't care a whole lot. Like I feel like the cake will be good, so we'll just go with you. I didn't do a cake tasting, but you are absolutely welcome to ask if they will do that for you. Of course, there are many different flavors of cake. There are also filling options and layers. You could do layers. I've seen raspberry fillings. I've seen lemon fillings. So it's maybe the white vanilla cake with a raspberry filling, white cake with raspberry filling. So that can add more of a cost, but it's really good. There are also lots of different types of frostings as well. Please be aware of that. There are like buttercream frostings. Some people use whipped cream frosting. There are definitely lots of options, so make sure you clarify that you're getting the frosting that you are wanting. All right, so additionally, there may be a cake cutting service that is offered by the caterer or by the reception venue itself. So this is going to be an extra fee, most likely. It might be included, but you'll want to clarify for sure. So you can have the caterer or the reception venue do this for you. It might be like $100, but they cut all the cake slices for you. They provide the plates, they provide the forks, so that's nice and very convenient if you just want it done and you don't have to think about it. Otherwise, you may have to think of someone that will be at your wedding that you're very close with, that wouldn't mind helping in this area, that would be willing to volunteer to cut the cake for you and serve people throughout the night. So if you get a special cake cutter volunteer, they would also additionally get a flower. So whether it's a corsage or a boutonniere, whoever it is, they'd get a flower. An alternative option to this is if you don't want cake at all, you can do cupcakes. I have seen this done and it was really, really cute. So they bought these tiered stands, cupcake stands, where they just put the cupcakes arranged on these stands and it looked like a cake, but it was actually cupcakes, and obviously it was a big hit. I had never seen that done before. It went over really well. So absolutely, you can do cupcakes instead. In addition to the wedding cake itself, I also have seen this done a lot at weddings, and this is also what I did at my wedding. We had mints served as well as nuts. So mints you can order even. So like those homemade mints that are so good. We had those ordered, and you have to keep them frozen or refrigerated. And then we also had mixed nuts served as well. That way you have the sweet and the salty option. So when you are in this mode thinking of the wedding cake, I want you to make sure that you purchase a cake knife. So there are some really pretty knives that you can buy for relatively cheap, even at Hobby Lobby or stores like that. So make sure you get a cake knife and the server. It normally comes in a set together. Also, be aware, there is this tradition out there that you're supposed to shove cake in each other's faces. I was very clear that I would not tolerate that. Because if you get cake shoved in your face as a bride, it could get all over your face. You're gonna have to redo your makeup because you have so many wedding photos still ahead of you for the day, like the first dances, or if you are taking sunset pictures with your husband. Like, I don't want to have to redo my makeup. I already spent time in the day doing my makeup. So I made sure I communicated with my husband that that was not going to happen. So be aware that I have seen so many weddings where this causes fights because they haven't talked about this and they haven't decided ahead of time if they're going to tolerate this or not. I don't know where this tradition started, but you're supposed to either like feed each other a piece of cake and then some shove it in each other's faces. And I like, no. So we went classy and we decided to feed each other the first piece of cake, but we even used forks. Now, I just thought that was normal because I had seen Sadie Robertson Huff in her wedding picture. She used a fork with her husband. And my mom was like, no, I hadn't seen that done before. Normally people just pick it up with their fingers and feed each other. But I guess we went super classy and it looks really nice in the pictures using the fork. So you can always do that. Be sure to order a cake topper. That is such a fun decoration and makes the photo really adorable. So what we used for our cake topper was our last name and our wedding date. It was really adorable. So you can order those and get those personalized, and they're fairly inexpensive and they make the photos really cute. And you can also do like figurines for cake toppers if you want. There are decorations. Some bakers put actual flowers on the cake as the cake topper. There are so many ideas. So just brainstorm and go through Google Images or Pinterest to get some good ideas regarding the cake topper. Now, this is something you may have never heard of. I don't know if you've heard of a groom's cake or not, but this is a tradition in certain areas of the country and has also been a big tradition in the past. I don't know if this is as big of a thing now, but you can do a groom's cake. So this might be a great way for you to get an additional flavor of cake. So maybe your wedding cake is white cake, vanilla cake, but you want chocolate cake available to your guests as well. This would be a fantastic option. So the groom's cake could be all chocolate cake. Now, what is a groom's cake? This is a themed cake for the groom. It represents something that the groom really, really loves. So this could be a themed cake regarding a sports team that he loves. Or if he's a weightlifter, you could have like barbells and dumbbells on it. Or if he's a farmer, you could make it look like he's farming or fishing or whatever certain hobby he has. I've seen some very creative groom's cakes. So that is something very fun that he can have his say on what he wants it to look like. Also, some ways to save money. I already talked about this. Buy a smaller wedding cake and then buy extra sheet cakes. Not only is that simpler, but is also much more budget friendly. You could also go with more of a hobby baker instead of a professional wedding cake baker. Of course, you'll want to make sure that they've at least made a wedding cake in their life and that they are capable of doing this. But maybe someone that you know is a very talented baker, but they don't do it as their career. It's just more of a side talent that they love to do, but don't use it as a source of revenue. This, they might not charge as much as a professional wedding cake baker. You can save money by going with only standard flavors as well. So if you do plain white vanilla cake, that's going to save you money as opposed to if you are doing fillers or extras. So that's the lemon meringue fillers, the raspberry fillers in the cake. So that's what I mean by that. But you do not have to go the traditional wedding cake route if you don't want to. I've already alluded to this, but I will give you more options as I have seen more options done. You can go other sweets. You can go with other sweets. So I already mentioned cupcakes, but you could also do cookies, or you could do a mixture of all these things. You could have donuts. You could have pies or cobbler or cheesecake. Make your wedding your own. If you hate cake, don't have cake. Go with cheesecake or go with donuts. You know, just make your wedding reflect what you love. You don't have to do it the same as everyone else out there. So my next point of advice I have for you is to find a design of a wedding cake that you like. That way you have a reference point to show the baker. You can say, hey, I want the cake to look like this. That way you're not explaining what you're seeing in your mind, but they are visualizing something completely different, and then it doesn't turn out how you want it to look, and then you're disappointed. So it's best to over-communicate and provide photos. That way they know what you're expecting. So, questions for you and your fiance to discuss. These are things you need to talk about. Do you have a vision of what you want your wedding cake to look like? Does one of you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you want a giant wedding cake? Or are you okay with having that small wedding cake to save money? Do you want designs on it, or do you just want it to be plain white, nothing fancy? Do you want flowers? Do you want the cake topper on it that is your last name, or do you want figurines? Talk about all these details. Are you wanting a standard wedding cake, or are you wanting to go those additional option routes, meaning having cupcakes at the reception instead, or the cookies, or the donuts, or the pies, or the cobbler, or the cheesecake? Are you wanting the standard option of a wedding cake or one of those other options? Ask your fiance and yourself, are you okay with having a smaller wedding cake and then purchasing additional sheet cakes in order to save money? Because you can put that same design from your wedding cake onto the sheet cakes. That way it looks very similar and it will be beautiful. It turned out fantastic, and it was really easy to transport the leftovers too. Ask each other what flavor of cake you would like. Do you want any fillings or any layers, or what type of icing would you like? What frosting style do you like? Some people can't stand buttercream icing. Some can't stand the whipped cream icing. What do you guys like? What type of design or decoration would you like on the cake? This is where looking at images and photos of cakes definitely helps. What kind of cake topper would you like? Do you want your last name? Do you want your wedding date on the cake topper? Do you want bride and groom figurines? Do you want flowers? What kind of cake topper do you want? Additionally, do you need to designate a family member or friend as your cake cutter? Or do you need to pay the extra cake cutting service fee through the caterer or the reception venue in order to get the cake cut and it's done? You don't have to think about it. And also a question for them, if you're hiring that service to be done, will they continue to restock the cake throughout the night? And do they provide the plates for this dessert as well? Also, ask your fiance, does he want a groom's cake? Does he want one? And then the big question, are we going to shove cake in each other's faces? Are we going to politely feed each other instead? Or do you not want to do any of those things? It's all up to you. So these are great conversations that you need to have with your fiance. And now heading to this next section is going to be covering the questions that you need to cover with the wedding cake baker. And that will give you good insight as to what you need to ask and cover when you have meetings with the wedding cake bakery. That way you know if they're a good fit for you. So you know the basics about the wedding cake. Now let's talk about questions that you can ask the wedding cake baker to make sure that they are the right fit for you. So definitely feel free to ask them how long they have been baking cakes for weddings. This will give you a great idea of how long they've been in the industry, if they're familiar with the wedding industry, and if this is even comfortable for them to bake a wedding cake, because it's very different than making just a standard cake. Ask them what their most popular cake design is. So if they have like a diamond pattern, crisscross diamond patterns that they put, or if they do swirlies that look very ornate and formal and beautiful, they can probably show you photos of past cakes that they have baked. That way you have a reference point and can actually physically see their work and make sure that you agree, approve, and like it. Ask them what their most affordable option is in terms of flavors and icing type and decoration. So ask them this so that way you can work your budget down if you are trying to save money in this area. You can also state very clearly to the baker, our budget for the wedding cake is approximately this amount. What size of wedding cake and level of detail on it would we be able to get for that price? And they will be able to tell you, oh, for that amount, like you could only get a small cake, or for that amount, I can make a big cake for you. That way you know and are better able to compare bakeries to each other if you tell them your budget and they're like, oh yeah, with that amount, we're capable of doing this. You may be able to get more for your money at a different bakery. You can ask them how their cakes are priced. Are they priced by the size of the cake or by the slice? So by how many servings they're capable of producing. How much do you charge for sheet cakes? I am going to keep reiterating this because it is so much more budget friendly to get a small tiered cake and then buy additional sheet cakes. So ask them how much they charge for sheet cakes. I think the standard size for sheet cakes is like the 16 by 20, but you can get the massive sheet cakes and that will make the price drop down even less. So, do you offer tastings? This would be great to know if you actually want to know what your wedding cake will taste like. Do you offer fillings or layering? So lemon meringue layers, raspberry fillings, or do they only do standard flavors? Do you have examples of past wedding cakes that you've made that you can show us? So hopefully they have a resume of photos of wedding cakes that they have created. This will speak for itself. This will give you a fantastic idea of if you are going to be happy with the wedding cake that they design or if you should maybe go with someone else. Ask them if there is a delivery fee. So they may deliver the cake to you, to the reception venue, I should say. And that might be an additional fee, but it's going to be helpful because they'll have to deliver the cake to you on the wedding day, obviously, and they will be delivering the cake probably while you are going through the ceremony. So they will have to set it up at the reception while you're busy. So that delivery fee would be worth it in that case. Ask the baker if they are able to use your cake stand if you have one that you love and have purchased, or if you don't have a cake stand, ask the baker if they will provide a cake stand. So the baker that I used, she had multiple design options of cake stands even. One was more formal and Cinderella looking, which is what the theme was of our wedding. So I asked if I could borrow hers, and then we of course just had to return it back to her once the wedding was finished. Ask the baker if they make groom's cakes as well. So if your fiance is wanting a themed cake, a themed groom's cake, if he has a sports team that he loves, or if he's a big fisherman, or if he is a weightlifter or a farmer. Ask how much these groom cakes are, how much detail can go into them, how much they typically charge. Ask the baker what steps you need to take in order to reserve their services for your wedding day. Is there a contract to sign? It is so wise to have things in writing, to have things dated, and to have signatures. That way it is clear cut that it's communicated. You expect them to be available for their services on your wedding day. You expect a cake to be made for your wedding day. That way it's not just word of mouth. You need things signed most generally. So what steps do you need to take in order to reserve their services? It is important, like I said, for many different sections in this course to think ahead and to get on vendors' schedules, because there are so many weddings out there that they may already have weddings booked for that particular weekend, especially in summers. So they may have to turn you away if you are coming to them too close to the date. So think ahead. That way you for sure get the cake baker that you actually want. Ask them what amount is required for the deposit and when the remaining balance is due, as well as what forms of payment do they accept, if there's an additional service charge or service fee for paying with a credit card, because there are extra fees for card processing. So hopefully this gives you a great reference point on the questions you need to ask the wedding cake baker and clarifies all the details that you need to talk about. That way you do not have to call back or email back over and over and over. If you can just ask all these questions in one sitting or in one phone call, it's going to save you a lot of time. And I guarantee you, you are going to impress these vendors. They're going to say, wow, this bride is so organized and she knows her stuff. So hopefully this helps you. Thank you for watching. You're doing so great working through this course, and please continue on.